Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Visage, or Visage, or however you want to say it. Previously, we started working on the VHS tapes where we found ourselves in alternative realities um, and learned that Dwayne was an alcoholic and drug addict, which we kind of already knew. But that he was also neglecting his family, eventually leading to the murder-suicide that we are all too familiar with. Now that we have learned more about Dwayne's home and personal life, we are going to finish the VHS tapes and see if we can figure out what really happened. Okay, so I don't remember which one this is, but we're done with this tape. Indifference. So I usually just leave the tapes in so that way the TV doesn't get flicked on and off by the hauntings. So our next one is Pride. It says Amusement Park with the Kids Part 1. There we go. Okay, there's your hint. A hatch with the D on it. We're looking for the big D hatch. And we have a room filled with, looks like lab benches and chairs and monitors. Possibly a part of the hospital? That part I'm not sure on. Yeah, there's the lab again. Okay. I think that's the rollover for us. I'll let it play one more time. But we are again looking for the big D. There it is. So if I recall, this one actually throws it in your face a little bit at first too. It doesn't throw the D in your face, it throws something else in your face. I gotta stop saying that. Okay, again, there's the lab. So the hint's telling us to look for the hatch, basically. But you can't do anything with the hatch, and that's why it has to put something else in your path. Everybody's looking for the D tonight. Got it. Check. I'll give you the D. Don't worry. What we're gonna go looking for it. Okay, we should be rolling over here soon. Yeah. All right. Like I said, the thing that's gonna get thrown in our face is this. So it's an omega key. There's an omega symbol attached to it in a glass. And that should, thank you, game. Wait, I gotta think, where are we going with that? This way. If you recall, early on when we were picking up the tapes originally, there was a box in this area. Or not the tapes, we were picking up the Matryoshka doll during the while we were looking for the tapes. And this is where we found that last Matryoshka doll. And here's the box. cryptic handle with a big D on it. Now, at some point in time, if you've explored the house thoroughly, you may recognize that symbol. So we're heading to the basement in the far back area, basically right before the construction. So back by the blue light. Oh, my lighter was taken away. Yeah, remember, I accidentally turned off the breaker. Okay, so there's the big D. Oh, this is probably one of... Wow, that's loud. This is probably one of the most significant pieces of information, and we've been missing it for a long time. But we are on a timer here, so I'm going to try to do this quick. Wait for it. Okay, there's a gas leak. That's why we're on a timer. So I do believe this is the hospital. And there are some subtle hints here that we are in a chemistry lab. And I'm going to talk about that in a moment. There are 2 documents here. You'll notice a lot of the documents are the same things we found in the hospital. But there are a few important ones that we want to look at. And let's see if I can find them. Here we are. Okay, staff list. There's a couple, at least 1 or 2 names on here. Okay, so if you look at the top, you'll see the name Andrew Smith, which I believe might possibly be one of the doctors. Because there was a Dr. Smith, and we were being treated by a Dr. Smith. That's how we got the chlorpromazine. It was on the marker. He's the one who checked in, or he's the one who was, while Reagan was being checked in, he was taking over his case. And if you look at the bottom of the list, you'll see our name, Dwayne Anderson. So, kind of key points here. We are in a chemistry lab. This is it says it right on there. April 1952 is when the project started and is ongoing. We have spent, according to this, 67.5 hours, and our project is completed. We don't know what's going on beyond that. So we started in April 1952. The whiteboard has a structure on it. If you're not familiar with that structure, that is the molecular formula, that is the molecular structure for LSD. So that's important. And there's one other piece of information, a manifest of chemical supplies. So we got the structure for a psychoactive compound on the board, shipment information that we're going to Oregon State. If you look at this list, there are some precursors required for making it. And timeline-wise, we are in the right time for that compound to have been synthesized. Okay, come on. Let me see, I need to get up there. Oh, can I climb on this? Well, actually, can I just climb up? Yeah, I can. So we want to get back here. And we want this. Okay. That's telling us to move. Okay, come on. And there's some wreckage here that's kind of pointing out to where to go. Are you kidding me? Give me the lighter. Give me the lighter. Come on. Before I die. So the game's like, I'm going to give you all this really important information to read, and I'm going to try to kill you really quickly while you have to read it. So, but those were some of the finer points of what you were trying to figure out there. And this should look all too familiar. Black footprints. And they should lead you back to the hatch. Okay, let's head to the progress room. So, essentially what we saw there was Dwayne is working as a chemist. Was working as a chemist. Probably an organic chemist, because they seem to have been synthesizing LSD. That was our take home from that. So we got 2 pieces missing. So timeline-wise, the compound was first synthesized in 1938. Effects were first discovered in 1943, and it became a great interest to the psychiatric community in the 50s and 60s, and that was 1952 when he started. So that falls right into that timeline where that would have been, important. So that's kind of our takeaway from this. We now know what his occupation was, and I think the hospital is where that lab is. I don't think that was a university or anything like that. I think that was a part of the hospital, because the chlorpromazine bottle had a Dr. Smith on it. Dr. Smith checked in Rakin, and there was a Smith, Andrew, or whatever it said, Andrew, something Smith on that list. Now, I thought Dr. Smith had a different name, so I could be wrong. It could be 2 of them, because I thought there was an Andrew Smith, which was on that, and I thought there was a Smith Walter as well. So I could be misinterpreting that, but I think that's what that was meant to indicate. Okay, so we are about to embark on what I think is the most terrifying part of this entire game. I would rather do anything else we have ever done than do this again. Prison. Okay, what does it say on the tape, actually? I have it written down, but just... wow, I totally can't read that. Oh, amusement part 2, okay. No, this one's a little bit strange. I could not figure out what the hint was here. Maybe I need to see it again and think about it. So, the images, if I remember, show where we're going, not how to get there. And I think that might be what their intention was. I think it was meant to trap you. Because it's called prison, and I think it's meant to be a literal prison for us. Because you can't get out of it. Unless you find the way out. And it's not easy if you don't know what you're doing. So I think that was it. That's all they show us. They don't give us any more information than that. Let's see if it gives anything away. So I would say, no, it's absolutely not giving you any hints on where to go. None of that is in the house. It will be, just not right now. Okay, so that's finished twice at least. So we're going to the unfinished part of the basement. That's where we have to go. And I remember watching somebody. Okay, so the first time I experienced this, I really didn't know what to do. It scared me to death. And I immediately went online and saw if anybody else had run into this. I think you gotta walk around here. Yeah, the hallway's gone. And the lighter doesn't work. So I watched somebody else do this, and they actually loaded out of it. They got scared too. Because what even? So the layout here is important. The hallway breaks off to the left and right here and down the way, and we need to go to each section of the hallway. However, there's a bit of information there missing at this point. Yeah. So the first time I ever did this, basically what you have to do is you have to get... Uh-oh. 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 I think you're starting to see the problem at this point. That really shouldn't have happened. The lights are supposed to protect you. That's the part I didn't know about. What you need to do is go down to the ends of the four hallways, the ones that fork off to the left and right, and smash the walls in. And there's little kind of things in those rooms you're going to check out, but once you get them all, we can get out of this room. The one thing I did not know about, though, was the light bulbs. The light bulbs move. The first time I did this, and the second time, and I think the third, I had no idea these moved. I literally did this in pitch black, hoping he wouldn't run into me. And we need this box. So we're going to take it back with us. I'll just leave it there for now. So the first room was just a room. I think this is meant to be an observation room, because you can see people behind it looking at us in suits. So I don't know if you guys can see that clearly, but there's people in suits in the back. And so I think it's supposed to be an observation room, kind of like Rickon found. And if you've been following along with my walkthrough, you know why that's important. And if you hear a voice in the distance and been following my walkthrough, you know where this is also going.
Smile, money, fight, torture, cheerful, pleasure, party, hearts.
You can hear the sound of a baby crying, and it's just randomly saying words to you. Some of them innocuous, some of them not. I think it's meant to be a subliminal messaging. I think it's supposed to go beyond that a little bit, but... Okay. Is that the last one over here? Yeah. Let's get the wall first. So the voice was speaking random words. It was also the voice of Lucy's friend, and you could hear a baby crying, kind of like a reference to Dolores. So, there's a trophy here, kind of a hidden one. And you should get it just from walking over here. From Johny to you. And there's an axe stuck in the wall. If you like horror stories, you probably know that reference. The trophy is called Special Gift, and it's called Find Johny Special Gift. If you don't know that reference, that's a reference to The Shining, the Kubrick version based off the Stephen King novel. So I think the purpose of that tape was to confirm a couple of suspicions of mine. One, that Lucy's friend wasn't real. Why is that going nuts? So I think it was supposed to confirm that Lucy's friend was never real. It was a voice, but not like a spirit. So the friend was real, but it wasn't like a demon like a lot of people would think it was. And I think it was also showing that Rickon was right. You know, people are observing them. So that is, to me, one of the most terrifying parts of the game, because, like I said, I had no idea those light bulbs moved. And before we move on, let's head to the progress room quick. And so that's what That's probably we're seeing our black oily friend again. The one covered in the sludge or whatever it is. I have ideas as to what it is. We'll get into that in the next part. Okay, so we're just missing one piece. So one more piece of the mask, and I would argue that this is the other biggest part of the story that we are missing. Okay, Affliction, John walking with mom. Looks like a well. Some kind of vault type door. And it's really hard to, it can be tricky to figure out images like that, but that was our hint. That was the mirror room, the one we used to start Dolores' chapter. So I'll let it play out one more time. Crap, the house is getting angry. There's our well again. And it's showing in reverse where we're going this time. So the mirror room to the vault door to the well. There's the vault door. And the mirror room. And it's showing a very specific part of the mirror room. If you look at it, it's the floor. And that matters. It's this part right here that we're looking at. See if I can get the... There's a gap in the floor. And we need to go to... Let's go this way. We need to go to the storage room. Because we need something to pry up the floorboards. And the crowbar... Yes, I said crowbar. Is going to be our way to do that. Come on, grab it. Grab it. Grab it. Okay. Pick it up. Okay. We just want to drop in. Okay, does this still work? Yes. Game, you gotta stop putting me in dark rooms and telling me not to stand in the dark. This is, you did this to me, okay? Okay, there's our door. Oh god, I'm stuck. And there you go. Riversdale Aqueduct System. But you gotta ask yourself, why would we be here? And if you think about it for just a second, it probably will start making a lot of sense. This should look somewhat familiar. A black oily substance. This is a magnetic card reader used to unlock something. Something, you mean like the door it's next to? Coca soda. Game, come on. Developers, please. Did you have to do that? Coca soda, really? Okay. There's a vent up there. Really important that you remember this. And there should be a key. There it is. Lewis Taylor. So, yeah, that's Lewis. You have a name now. I can't see a thing. Can I? No, I can't. I can't get my lighter out. I suppose. What's the worst that could happen? Boondock Saints drop out of it into the middle of a room of gangsters. So what we just picked up was a key to the locker. If you notice, Lewis has been a common figure in the story. So common that I argue there's actually 6 main story arcs in this, once we include the neighbors. And there's a chunk of information missing on him. So, this goes to his locker. He's covered in the black oily substance. I think it's a fair assumption to say he's the thing at our house. Riversdale Water Treatment Plant. So it's not just the aqueduct we're dealing with here. This is where they actually treat the water. Why would this be important to us? You know, going from a chemistry laboratory that makes LSD to this, that does not inspire confidence in Dwayne, does it? But sure does shine some light on the situation. So we now officially have a name for our oil-covered stalker. And the apple. And what a fitting place to return. The water heater. And that will earn the Mirror Mask Master Trophy for finding all 7 pieces of the mask and completing all 7 VHS tapes. So I think that highly implicates that Dwayne is responsible for a whole lot of death. Stuff that we're not seeing. And there you have it. Our progress room is complete. We have the mirror mask. That's all there is to it. So I think the Wretched Souls, like I said, in some cases they seem to resemble the villains of the story in some cases. But I think that was a clear indication that some of the Wretched Souls also represent the victims. A whole lot of victims. And I would say that that might explain why Lewis is haunting us, so to speak. Alright, that was the last of the VHS tapes. Let's review what we know about Dwayne's story at this point and compare with the other stories. Dwayne was a chemist that started working in 1952 for an unidentified organization that had them synthesizing LSD and possibly other psychoactive compounds that were being added to the neighborhood water through Riversdale Water Treatment Plant in the state of Oregon. I say possibly other psychoactive compounds because we don't know exactly when everything was finished. Yeah, or if they were experimenting with other things, which I'm imagining they very possibly were. There were several names on that list, not just ours. Dwayne likely had a doctorate in chemistry because this would take an experienced chemist, and I assume that his specialty was organic synthesis. Dwayne married his wife Claire, and they had their son John Michael around 1972, so probably quite a bit later in life, given that he's been working for the company at that point for at least 10 years. And then their youngest daughter, Sarah, they had probably around 1977. Since Dwayne started his work with the organization in 1952, and based on the photographs around the house, I estimate that they had the kids in their 30s, 40s, something like that, which is why I said probably a little bit later in life for them. Over time, Dwayne became an alcoholic and started taking the antipsychotic chlorpromazine for reasons unknown. I imagine he turned to alcohol because he was feeling the weight of what the organization was doing and his role in the matter. However, I don't think that was the reason for the chlorpromazine. I don't think he was an addict. After a little research, I found an article from 1977 revealing that chlorpromazine was one of a few pharmaceuticals that could serve as an antagonist to the LSD, meaning that it could potentially stop the action or effect of the substance from, having whatever effect they're going for with this. Dwayne and his family were living in the same house where numerous people had died, presumably as a result of what they were doing at the water treatment plant with the psychoactive compounds. So he would have known to take precautions. I don't think that was by chance. I think he knew to take it. Despite his efforts, Dwayne began to ignore and neglect his family and eventually turned to the murder-suicide where he killed them at gunpoint and then turned the gun on himself in 1985, as best as I could put that down, leading us to this purgatory. It was indicated that Claire may have married Dwayne for his money and that she wanted his addiction to catch up with him. It was also indicated that his children, John Michael at least, may have had similar thoughts about him. Whether that's a truth or a reflection of his thoughts, I don't really know. If you go back to Dolores' story and the T key, I put in quotes because it was rat poison to us, there was a tag that read, "From Johny to you," and it was spelled really poorly in a child's handwriting. And when we found out that the T was rat poison, I started to think, maybe the special T was the special T could have been a reflection of Dolores' paranoia about her husband, George. It could have been a reflection of George's intentions. Or if you take the note from Johny, it could be a reflection of us. Perhaps Claire and John Michael could really see Dwayne for what he was, and John Michael wanted him dead as well. Which is a really dark thought, to think that a child would want to kill their own father. But look at what Dwayne has been doing, and the way he's been treating his family. Therefore, I wonder if the murder-suicide stemmed from Dwayne's wife and his son, or his own paranoia. Also, I do not want to discount the fact that he was simultaneously abusing alcohol and antipsychotics, while likely being dosed with psychoactive compounds from the water supply. There was little on Lewis Taylor other than learning that he was an employee of Riversdale Water Treatment Plant and that he is our black oily figure. Name revealed finally. Lewis leaves black foot and handprints in the hospital and house and spawns from the large blotches around the house, that started showing up after we finished the first chapter. He seems to continually come after us whenever he's around. I do not know whether or not Lewis was involved in the so-called organization's plans, but I am guessing that he was killed for some reason and that Dwayne was somehow responsible. Perhaps he was a whistleblower if he did have insider information, or he somehow just stumbled across something and figured out what was going on, similar to Rakin, which makes me wonder if Dwayne, so we know Dwayne was probably doing his work at the hospital. Maybe he was also doing some work at the water treatment plant at some point, and he figured out that Lewis knew something. This could explain why Lewis seems to continually target Dwayne whenever we are in between chapters and in some of those VHS tapes. I do have a couple hypotheses for Lewis's appearance. The first tracing back to Dwayne's project and how Lewis may have died. If you have any familiarity with organic synthesis, and I want to add on wastewater treatment, it's not uncommon for these types of reactions to generate blackened byproducts from the carbon content, in both cases. I was originally thinking about the organic synthesis because, chemistry is a strong theme in this. And I ironically found an article that was titled "Getting Through the Black Tar Phase" that was on the ChemTips website, and I thought that was really ironic. Really funny, really ironic. In addition, there are several points throughout the story where you find Lewis being connected to water and making gurgly sounds as if he was underwater and had some kind of fluid in his mouth. In fact, if you go back to an earlier point, Lewis can actually be found under the bed in John Michael's room after completing the first chapter, and he comes out of the well at the end of the Affliction VHS tape where we learned his name. Furthermore, there is an image in the attic depicting a face underwater as if being drowned. And I can go back and see if it's still up there, but it was up there. I'll check it later. The sound of waves can be heard if you interact with the image. Something starts pounding at it as if it's trying to get out, and eventually it leaves a blackened handprint on the image. And there was clearly a face in the back of the image as if someone was holding the head underwater. I'm not entirely positive whose face it was. It could be Dwayne for all I know, but I suspect that it was Lewis's face. So therefore, my primary hypothesis is that Lewis was drowned in some kind of blackened substance, either from the organic synthesis, the untreated water that was contaminated from the synthesis, something like that, where the psychoactive compounds were being used. I think Dwayne picked up on it and may have killed him by drowning him. And I assume it would probably happen at the plant, but maybe it happened at his house, because who knows? We don't really know about that. And that would explain the fixation he has on Dwayne. My alternative hypothesis is that Lewis' blackened appearance could simply symbolize the deaths caused by Dwayne and the organization, but I prefer my more sciencey hypothesis. I'm somewhat of I'm a water treatment. I have a water treatment background from my phytoremediation projects, and somewhat of a really, minor background in organic synthesis. So I like the sciencey explanation. Going back to the other stories, there was a common trend of people being treated for mental illness. However, given what we know about the water treatment plant, I did some research on the abuse of our psychoactive compound. Apparently, overuse can lead to, check this against the characters: mood swings, aggression, paranoia and suspicion, memory problems, delusions, distortions of time and identity, persistent psychosis, and something known as hallucinogen persistent disorder, which essentially means that you have reoccurrences of visual disorders that can last to up to a year or more after taking the last dosage. And we know that this would have been a chronic thing because they were constantly being treated for this. And I feel like a lot of those really fit the stories of Lucy, Dolores, Rakin, and Dwayne in different ways, if you really look at it. One point that I want to explore is why Lucy, Dolores, and Dwayne were so clearly affected by the psychoactive compounds while their family members seem to be okay from our perspective at least. Lucy and Dolores were both being treated for mental illness because of their behaviors, but we don't know anything about the medications other than the treatments seem to make the problem worse for both of them. We know that Lucy was being treated by syringe, but we don't know anything more about Dolores' treatments. I was considering the idea that George could have been giving her medication in her special tea, which would explain why she thought George was trying to poison her. So maybe he wasn't poisoning her at all. He was just trying to medicate her the way he was being told to, or just trying to sedate her. We also know from Rakin's story that the hospital was likely connected because of him sneaking out and finding the observation room, which might indicate that the so-called treatments were simply increased doses of the psychoactive compounds, or something altogether different, maybe something related to those. That or maybe the water treatment plant came later in the story, and Lucy and Dolores were earlier subjects of these projects, more centralized subjects. An additional point of interest was the voices that Lucy and Dolores would hear through the electronic devices. And I think the tapes brought me to an interesting hypothesis. There were a few rooms in the prison VHS tape relating to the different characters, including one where a radio could be heard. The voice from the radio was the same as the friend from Lucy's story, stating random words in tandem, some of them kind of potentially on the verbally abusive side of words. Lucy heard the same voice from her treehouse radio and TV telling her to kill her pet bird Pico, eventually leading her to do just that. Meanwhile, Dolores tells George that she hears her own voice from the baby monitor, muttering a series of numbers that are the, quote, key to her inner house, quote, unquote. I don't really know what that means, but considering that Lucy's friend and Dolores's voice may have come from someone else, perhaps a real person with sinister motive was behind it. My hypothesis is that the voices they were hearing were experimental directives to see if the treatments could be used to manipulate people into performing tasks, revealing information, or something on that order. In contrast to Lucy and Dolores' stories, Raken and Dwayne were not likely taking medications on behalf of medical personnel. However, their behaviors could be explained by the project taking place at the water treatment plant. Raken knew that something was amiss, but he did not have the whole picture and ended up paying the price for it in the end by getting too close. Meanwhile, Dwayne would have known to counteract the effects of the psychoactive compounds with chlorpromazine, as I noted, but his mistake was excessive drinking, and he could have been targeted by the organization as well, just to keep him quiet. One more thought I had was on a potential connection between Raken and Dwayne, relating to the declaration that Dwayne had ruined Raken's life. We never got a clear image of the person that locked Raken away to silence him, and I was considering the idea that Dwayne may have been the one responsible. You can see the person in the background shutting the door, but you don't really get a clear image of them. I was already considering that Dwayne had done something similar to Lewis, so why not add another victim to his list? As a final point of interest for those who may be unaware, there was a project conducted at the same time that took place in the U.S. history, and it mirrors the story presented here. Project MKUltra was an illegal human experiment conducted by the CIA from 1953 through 1973, same timeline as this project. The project was devised to develop interrogation procedures, to weaken individuals into coerced confessions through various forms of brainwashing and psychological manipulation, one of which included the psychoactive compound, such as the major one used in this story. The project was revealed to the public in 1975 and declassified in 2001, which is why everybody knows about it now. I'm not saying that this is meant to be the exact same project, but it most certainly was inspired by it. That I don't think can be denied. Anyway, I know that was a lot, and there is still more to come, but if you are following along for the trophy walkthrough, then you should have a special gift for finding Johnny's gift, also known as the Shining reference in the prison VHS tape. Additionally, you should have the Mirror Mask Master Trophy for finding all 7 pieces of the Mirror Mask. And that is a good place to end this episode. To recap, we completed the VHS tapes where we learned about Dwayne's professional life and work as a chemist for an unknown organization experimenting on people using psychoactive compounds. We also learned more about our black oily figure who was named Lewis Taylor, and he worked at the water treatment plant where the organization was dosing the water supply with said compounds. Next time, we are going to collect the missing pages of the neighbor's comic book and see what we can learn about the story by reading through those, and maybe doing some re-exploration of the house while we're at it. With that being said, let's close things out for the night. Thank you all for joining, and I will see you all later.